Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and to another Lattes and Literature. I could not leave Hawaii without filming one for you. We are so overdue. I was shocked and appalled to see that I have not filmed one for almost a year, 11 months. And so I have my latte here in my beautiful tropical octopus mug, and I have quite a few books to share with you, most of which I absolutely loved and a few that I was a little bit disappointed by. And as always, I share both and I try and share as many categories as I can, as well as I've kind of been trying to broaden the breadth of my reading over the last couple of years away from just purely fiction. So if you haven't already grabbed a coffee, hit pause, go get yourself a good cup of coffee or tea, and come back and join me. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button as well while you are getting yourself positioned for a chatty video. So let's go through the paperbacks I have first, because I have three that were beach reads. This one actually comes from the library in the complex that my mom lives in. They have this great kind of book sharing system, and I was so happy to see this on the shelf because it jogged my memory of your recommendations. So many of you guys have read this book, which is why I'm not going to wax lyrical about it too much, because you probably already know what it's about. It's about a woman who, like me, is named Eleanor, and it's very much uplit. So it's a kind of new name for this genre, which is meant to be very feel-good, but also come from a very sensitive place, and a place often of initial sorrow. And so this book is no different from that. This is a very quirky, fallible narrator who is very unlike any other narrator that I have come across, and I very much fell in love with her voice, as most of you have as well, I'm sure. The book has a few twists and turns, but for the most part, it is an ode to the modern theme of loneliness, and that's what it was inspired by as well. So the author, Gail Honeyman, has actually given a few interviews where she said that she was inspired to write this book when she read an article about modern loneliness and how it's often said to be something that only afflicts seniors, but that's actually not the case, and many young people have a deep sense of loneliness today as well. And I think the book tackles that issue very eloquently. I will say I thought the twist at the end was a little odd, but it's not meant to be a thriller, so it's almost like, in my eyes, it was a little bit unnecessary, like you didn't need it or not need it, because for the most part it is just about this character's unique voice and some of the unique themes that are tackled throughout the book as well. But overall, I loved it. 10 out of 10. My second book was a really good quick beach read. So this is a kind of self-help type book about the very popular topic of happiness and how on earth do you achieve it, because it is such a hard to pin down topic. And so I'm still not sure how to pronounce his name. Parisha has actually had quite a few years of trying to tackle this topic, but he started through a much more lighthearted kind of way. He used to blog. He's actually Canadian and used to blog about just little things to make people happy, little moments in life. And so then he was inspired, I think, from that journey to write a book about essentially simple steps to take to be happier. So all of the chapters have very pithy titles, like the 3 S's of success, do this, and criticism can't touch you. But I really enjoyed the simplicity of it, because I think writing simply and having a very simple message but with easy takeaways is actually uniquely difficult. And so I think he did that very well with this book. Did I learn anything groundbreaking from it? Not really, but it is definitely a book about embracing some of the things that make you afraid and going for the unknown. I know a lot of you have enjoyed my video about productivity and creating more time for yourself, and there's a lot of tips in here that are kind of harmonious with some of the things that I said in that video. So I'll link that video down below, but if you want to kind of read a whole book about that sort of thing, plus the message of how to try to be happier, this book is a very good option, I think. The next book is about a very well-loved presenter from my childhood, and as you all may or may not know, this is being made into a movie with Tom Hanks starring. So I wanted to read the book first. This, I guess, would fit into the genre of biography, but it's a very lovingly written biography, and it's very well researched. Every detail of his life from childhood throughout all of the years that he produced the show, first on a smaller network and then on PBS. So Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was very much a show about listening, appreciating the simple things in life. That's how I remember it from being a child, and I think the tone of the book very much mirrors that. The only thing I will say is the author is, I think, sometimes a little bit too loving towards his subject matter, and there are so many parts where he will spend just a lot of time excusing, for example, Fred Rogers's rather privileged upbringing. And I just think if you're writing a biography, you don't need to excuse your subject. Generally speaking, those of us who read biographies usually read them about people that we like or at least are interested in. So I just felt like there was a little bit of like a stilt to it to some extent. He seemed like such a wonderful person that I'm not really all that surprised by that, but I do think it weakened a little bit some of the wonderful points to be made from the book and the message of his journey, generally speaking. I don't think that very much of it needed to be excused, and I feel like the author did that sometimes. But if you want to find out a lot more detail about his career and upbringing, this book will definitely fill you in. I do think it could have been a lot more concise as well. You can see it's pretty thick, and I don't know, I just think the subject matter could have been dealt with a lot more concisely, but that's my opinion, and it depends really ultimately as to how much detail you like to see in a biography, or whether you like it to be a little bit more pithy, which is probably my preference. So that's it for the paperbacks. You guys know I don't read a lot of paperbacks. I mostly read on my good old Kindle, so I have quite a few books to share with you from that. So let's go through those together, and I'll do the cute little screenshots up on the screen so you can see which one I'm referring to. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is my most recently finished, so I guess we're kind of going backwards, but I have to mention it first. So The Friend by Teresa Driscoll was so good. Such a page turner, and I get so tired of the description of this book is the next Gone Girl. It's so old now. That book has been around for way too long to have that reference really be made. But the idea of domestic thriller, I think, is what Teresa Driscoll specializes in. And this is actually, I believe, her second book, and I haven't read her first, and so I really want to after reading this one. So the narrator is Sophie, and it's very much about her friendship with a character called Emma, who has very like Rebecca-esque kind of descriptions written about her. So it really starts from like a little bit of a haunting perspective, and it goes back and forth in time, which is a tool that I'm not usually a huge fan of, but it works very well for this author. I think sometimes the story could have been sped up a little bit, but the twists and turns at the end are so good that I promise you it is worth waiting for. Next book to sort of change genres again is The Nine by Jeffrey Toobin, and it's all about the Supreme Court and all of the judges that have sat on it over many years. It is a very dry lawyer type book, I will warn you. Finally, I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit because I just got a huge mosquito bite on my wrist. It is not the time to be outside. Before We Met by Lucy Whitehouse is a rare example of a domestic thriller that starts off so strong, page turner for 50% of the book, and then gets a bit weaker towards the end, in that I felt like the plot was a little bit cliched and had a few surprises, but for the most part was a little bit predictable. But perhaps that's because I've just read too many of that genre by now, and so I've become pretty adept at predicting what's going to happen. But it was still very well written, but I would say The Friend should definitely be your first read if you are looking for a domestic thriller. So that is it for what was on my Kindle. Thank you so much for watching this installment of Lattes and Literature, and let me know if you'd like to see another.